Think about the last time you did something you didn't agree with. Maybe you laughed at a joke that wasn't funny. Maybe you followed a rule that made no sense. You told yourself it was your choice. It wasn't. Something else was steering you. And the strangest part is, scientists proved it decades ago, in a basement, with a cardboard sign and a set of keys. In the summer of 1971, a psychologist named Philip Zimbardo turned the basement of Stanford University into a fake prison. He wasn't testing prisoners. He was testing you. Or rather, he was testing ordinary college students who were, in every measurable way, just like you. Healthy, stable, screened for good mental health. Nothing about them predicted what came next. Zimbardo split the students into two groups at random: guards, prisoners. A coin flip decided who would hold the power and who would lose it. That's important. Remember that, because within 6 days the experiment had to be shut down. Not because of a flaw in the design, because the guards had become cruel and the prisoners had become broken, and nobody had told them to act that way. Why does a coin flip change who you become? Here's the reframe. You like to think of yourself as a fixed thing, a personality, a set of values that travels with you wherever you go. But your brain doesn't work like that. Your brain is built to read the room before it reads itself. Long before you decide who you are, your environment has already started deciding for you. This isn't a flaw, it's an inheritance. For most of human history, survival didn't depend on being a strong individual. It depended on fitting into a group fast. A human alone on the savannah, 200,000 years ago, was a human who was about to die. A human who could instantly sense the mood of the tribe, adopt its rules, and mirror its behavior, was a human who ate that night. Evolution didn't reward independent thinkers. It rewarded fast conformers. So, your brain built a shortcut. When you enter a new environment, especially one with clear roles and clear power, an ancient system activates before your conscious mind even has a vote. Psychologists call it de-individuation. That's a complicated word for a simple idea. It means you stop seeing yourself as you, and you start seeing yourself as your role. Put a stick figure in a guard uniform and give it sunglasses to hide its eyes, and something shifts. The guards in Zimbardo's basement started calling prisoners by number instead of name. They invented punishments nobody assigned them. They weren't bad people pretending to be guards. Their brains had quietly swapped identity for role, the same way yours does when you put on a work uniform, log into a video game, or walk into a courtroom. You've felt a smaller version of this yourself. Have you ever noticed you speak differently at a funeral than at a party? Different posture, different vocabulary, different jokes you'd never tell. That's not you switching personalities. That's the same ancient machinery dialing your identity up or down based on the room. But roles are only half the story. The other half is obedience. And for that, you have to go back further, to 1961, to a psychologist named Stanley Milgram, working just a few hundred miles away at Yale. Milgram wanted to understand something disturbing. He wanted to know why ordinary people, not monsters, not sociopaths, had gone along with atrocities during the Second World War. So he built an experiment. Volunteers were told to deliver what they believed were increasingly painful electric shocks to another person, every time that person got a test question wrong. The shocks weren't real. The pain was acted, but the volunteers didn't know that. A man in a lab coat stood beside them. He didn't threaten them. He didn't offer money. He simply said 4 words. Please continue. The experiment requires that you continue. 65% of participants went all the way to the maximum voltage. A dial labeled in plain black letters, "Danger, severe shock." Why would you hurt a stranger just because someone in a lab coat asked you to? Because your brain evolved to trust authority as a survival shortcut, not a moral failure. Figuring out right and wrong from scratch every single time takes energy and time you didn't always have. So your ancestors built a faster system. Find the person who seems to know what they're doing. Follow them. It's efficient. It kept the group aligned. It also, under the wrong conditions, turns a normal person into someone capable of terrible things without ever feeling like a villain while doing it. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. The people in Milgram's study weren't uniquely weak. Later replications across different countries and different decades kept finding similar numbers. This isn't a story about one flawed group of Americans in 1961. This is a story about how human brains respond to hierarchy, period. So you have two forces now, quietly running underneath your daily life. De-individuation, which dissolves your personal identity into a role, and obedience, which hands your judgment over to whoever looks like they're in charge. Put those two forces together, hand someone a uniform and a supervisor, and you've essentially rebuilt Zimbardo's basement. You just don't call it a basement, you call it a workplace. Think about how quickly a new employee adopts the unspoken rules of an office. Nobody hands out a manual for who gets interrupted in meetings, who takes credit, who stays quiet. You absorb it within days, the same way the guards absorb their role within hours. Think about how differently people behave online, hidden behind a username, than they would face-to-face. That's de-individuation too, just with a screen instead of sunglasses. Think about how often you've gone along with a decision at work you privately disagreed with, simply because someone with a title said it was fine. That's not weakness. That's the same 4 words from Milgram's lab coat, echoing through your inbox. Please continue. The process requires that you continue. Here's the twist, though, and it matters. Zimbardo's experiment is often told as proof that anyone can become a monster given the right uniform. But when researchers went back through the original audio recordings decades later, they found something the popular version of the story leaves out. Not every guard turned cruel. About 1/3 of them treated prisoners with real decency, even inside the same basement, wearing the same uniform, under the same instructions. That detail changes everything. It means the environment doesn't erase you. It reveals a range you didn't know you had. Some people, inside the exact same pressure, resisted the pull toward cruelty. They stayed anchored to who they were before they put on the uniform. What separated them wasn't willpower in some abstract sense. Researchers who study resistance to authority point to one recurring trait. People who had, even briefly, questioned an authority figure before, in any small context, were more likely to question one again. In other words, the habit of noticing the pull is what breaks it. So think again about the last time you did something you didn't agree with, the joke you laughed at, the rule you followed without asking why. You told yourself it was your choice. In a narrow sense, it still was. Your ancient wiring didn't remove your judgment. It just made judgment more expensive than obedience in that exact moment. The guards weren't born cruel, and the students who resisted weren't born saints. Somewhere between the coin flip and the 6 days, one group noticed the pull and one didn't. Tonight, you'll probably slip into a role without thinking about it. At work, online, in a group chat, In a family dinner where old dynamics reassert themselves the second you sit down. You'll feel the room deciding, in small, quiet ways, who you're supposed to be. And for the most part, that's fine. It's how humans have always functioned together. But somewhere in that room, there will be one moment where the role and your judgment disagree. A joke that isn't funny. A rule that doesn't hold up. An instruction that requires just a little too much continuing. That's the moment Zimbardo's basement is still waiting for. The only real difference between you and the guards is whether you notice it happening.